Everybody, Jensen Cummings here. Thank you as always for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 298. We think it's 298. This is Bait and Switch Job Offers, Best Served Tableside, Volume 3. We're focused on hiring process, horror stories, episode 5 of 8. There's been a lot to unpack so far in this series, talking about the job hunt process for the workers, trying to understand it from all sides of the equation. We need to have more transparency. We need to have better communications. We need to ask better questions. Really, we've done so much to kind of put everybody in the tiniest box possible, and we spend almost no time understanding the humans on the other side of a resume, on the other side of the table when we're interviewing. So I think this is super important for us to understand. All right. This episode, the bait and switch job offer. It's something like you all know. I tell myself a lot that I've been guilty of doing stupid shit when it came to hiring, thinking that I had this great system of evaluating talent and blah, blah, blah. This is one I have no experience with. The bait and switch job offer wasn't something that I realized was a chronic issue in our industry until I started reading responses to a lot of the questions that I ask in different social media groups. And it came up a lot where people thought they were walking in to interview for a sous chef position, and turns out they're trying to pay me $13 an hour for an entry-level line cook position. So things like that came up again and again. So I wanted to take a moment and kind of just give it a platform to speak on it. It makes sense to me because we're not being transparent. We're trying to trick people and sometimes prey on our passions for this industry to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. So fascinating how the hell we got here. So I want to talk about a little bit. So I'm going to bring in a couple guests to speak on it. Chef Ellen Duffy, I want to bring you in now. Good to see you.
Hi, Jensen. Good to see you too.
All right. Where are you from? Give us a little bit of background on kind of your trajectory in the industry.
Oh, well, I'm from Manchester, New Hampshire, which is technically a suburb of Boston. I've been in the industry for a grand total of 20 years, starting out as with my high school job. In a serious capacity, I've been in the industry for about, I'd say, 10 to 15 years in a professional capacity.
Okay, understood. And we're going to get into this topic. And you've been on before, so you know Tableside is all about just real, raw, sharing what the hell is going on in our lives, good, bad, indifferent. So I appreciate you being on once again. All right, I want to bring on Keisha now. And Keisha, first time on the show. Keisha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell us kind of where you are and a little bit of your trajectory in this wild and crazy industry.
Well, I'm in Chicago and started really young, like 14, but professionally probably like 13 years, but retired now. So no longer in the back of the house. So.
Yeah, a lot of us are having to like navigate just burnout. For me, it was like I've 15 years of 70-hour work weeks. Like you just burn out, and I think that it's part of it is like Chef Alan Plemons. I know Chef Alan Plemons mentioned this. He talked about how we refer to people in the kitchen as bodies, or like the term hands, and it's like we're not even human enough to be more than just taking up space. And it's just it makes a lot of sense to me now how I put myself and even others in that position. You get just so caught up in the machine. So appreciate you both being on. All right, at a high level, I want to break this down a little bit. Let's, Ellen, come to you first. Have you experienced this? Have you seen this? Like, what's the deal with this bait and switch, either like in the interview process or even when you get all the way through and get the job? What's going on here?
Yes, I've both heard and experienced it. A lot of times I think it has to do with the fluid nature of any restaurant, especially if you're working for a small business. When you are, typically ownership's trying to achieve their own dreams and they're hoping for the best, so they don't always know what they can offer you to give them the benefit of the doubt. On the other side of the coin, what you touched on with referring to back of the house people as bodies, I've heard a respected chef say, if you can fog up a mirror, we'll hire you. Which it's funny as a little saying, but it's not funny for the human beings who are back behind the lines. So
have a little bit of a reality, right? Or like, do they have a pulse? Great, I'll hire
if you have a pulse, you're welcome. Yeah, exactly. I think that a lot of times, those of us who are trying to achieve the dream of moving up the ladder from, say, dishwasher to head chef, we're so hungry that we wear it on our sleeves, and that gets taken advantage of. We'll get an offer from an employer of the moon and the stars and promotions and a title, and so we'll take that title in lieu of a sustainable wage. I've done it myself. I took the title my first time on a wage that I couldn't sustain because I was so happy to have it. And what ensued after that was, I was essentially washing every dish in the house. I was a janitor. I was a line cook. I was writing the menu. And then as soon as they were done with me, they got rid of me. They just wanted the recipes, the marketing, and the contacts, But I jumped at that because I was naive and hungry and excited. And I think that happens to a lot of people. It was not a true chef de cuisine job.
Yeah, we get sold a kind of a bill of goods a lot. And I mentioned it, we prey on our own passions, and then we allow that to be preyed on within the industry as well. You mentioned something, the fluid nature. I'm interested in this. And Keisha, I want to come to you maybe to kind of pose this, and then I want to hear your personal story. Let's stay on this for a moment. But I'm thinking about the fluid nature. And so to your point, like, you don't always know exactly what you're hiring for. And I have some empathy for that. Yet the reality is the business has to be responsible for that, not the person who's potentially getting hired. And we're shifting the responsibility to the person on the other side saying, well, here, we maybe have this. Are you willing to take it? And they've set themselves in a position to say, I've spent time, money, effort to get here, to be prepared, to do whatever I need to do to get this job. So I'm fascinated in that dynamic of it. Have you recognized that, Keisha, for you, where the restaurant doesn't know what it needs, right?
No
it doesn't
training,
know what
no
it needs.
accountability from upper management. Of course I have.
Yeah.
Of course. There's not a chef that hasn't experienced that, where there's no mentoring.
Oh, that's another.
Like what she had to do everything. Who helped her with the menu? Who helped her? Who guided her? Nobody. She was handed the restaurant at a horrible salary and expected to what? Make rainbows out of poop, So, and it doesn't happen, and then the owners get mad because it doesn't happen, and they let her go, and then they find the next gullible person. It happens all the time.
It's completely true. So, yeah. Oh, Heather, what's going on?
I think I thought it started at 1:30 Eastern time. Am I?
Let's go. We're already in it. We're going to just bring you right in. We are.
I'm sorry. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
No worries at all. Absolutely. You're not going to get docked points in your interview for being late. I appreciate you being here and joining us.
Was it at 1:30 Eastern?
Don't worry about it. Let's get right into it.
Okay.
Tell us where you're at and maybe just a little bit of your trajectory in the industry.
Sure. Okay. Right now I'm in the Catskills, New York. I have been here since for the quarantine, the coronavirus shutdown. My last position was Cindy's Rooftop, front of house in Chicago. That's on the Magnificent Mile, and very busy, a lot of volume. But I have been front of the house for 30 years. I've worked for 3 James Beard awarded chefs. Bartending, serving, managing, beverage director, Hawaii, Chicago, New York, and Florida. So, but I feel like I'm an old veteran of the industry, but yeah, that's kind of where I've been.
Good. Well, I want to bring you into a topic and let you speak on this. So this bait and switch job offer thing was something that I didn't realize was an issue, because it's not something that I ever put out there. But we've heard both from Ellen and Keisha and dozens of other people that we've interacted with that, a lot of times you think you're going in for a lead server position, working, Friday and Saturday, big money nights, and you come in and they're like, we're going to give you an AM lunch position and a lot of these things. You're just trying to get bodies. What said is if they can fog up a mirror, we'll hire them type of stuff. And so I wanted to hear from you kind of your thoughts on that. Have you experienced that?
there's a few type of I feel like exploitive situations that I've seen over the years. There is that staff of where, or that management style of where you have your lead people that get all the best cuts. Think of it like the staff is a family and everybody sits around eating, and there's like a subset of staff that just get scraps. They just get barely enough shifts to get by, and they're the worst shifts just to fill in, so that the other staff can have a smooth ride. It happens. It's one of those things where some people just have to kind of stay at the same job to work their way into that better role. But there's sometimes that there's no real path forward. You're just being kind of, exploited in that sense, and you're lied to. I think the one bait and switch experience where I really felt like I was exploited was I answered an ad in 2006 for a hotel restaurant that promised benefits. And after 90 days, as long as you work 40 hours a week, you get the benefit package. And I was hired in September, worked holidays, worked clopins over the weekends. I made money, but not better than at the job that I had left that didn't offer benefits. And 87 days in, they took myself and 3 other people that were hired in that same class completely off the schedule because they didn't want to give us the benefits. And at that point, it's January, it's Chicago, it's very slow. So I gave up a decent job for the hope of benefits, just to have no job and no access to unemployment because you're only hired for that short period of time. If the hotel had offered a seasonal position or been straightforward, they wouldn't have gotten the applicants, the quality of applicants, because I wouldn't have left a full-time job for a seasonal one. So I really felt like that was the bait and switch. Like you were offered one thing and then you gave up everything to do for that deal, and then it was like off the table. So
Heather, this is fucking bullshit. Yeah. Because I know exactly the situation you're talking about. This now I've heard people talk about a lot more throughout my career. Now it's making a little more sense to me. I was thinking about it in the offer itself. Yet what you're talking about is, they set a calendar reminder to make sure.
I was even going to the management and being like, what paperwork do I need to fill out to start my insurance? And they were like, oh yeah, we'll get to that next week.
The runaround. It was always
horrible.
It was always the intention. See, that kind of stuff, you just know, especially like having spent a lot of the formative time of my career in Colorado, right? It's a at-will work state. So you do have 90 days for any reason to get rid of somebody, and they have no recourse whatsoever. And you just know.
What state isn't an at-will? What state isn't at-will?
Yeah, it's a good point. So anybody, it's like.
I'm trying to think.
I've never been to an at-will or state that isn't at-will.
Keisha, I wanted to come back to you, Keisha, for a second, and specifically Ellen and Heather kind of told their story, their experience with it. This was interesting. You and I were rapping back and forth a little bit on our different experiences for a while, and kind of venting to each other a little bit. And I was talking about this topic specifically, and you're like, I don't know that I've dealt with that. And then you went way back, and you're like, I have dealt with that.
Well,
and it kind of standard and expectation. So take us back a little bit now that you're kind of like reflecting on the fact that you have been put in this vulnerable situation.
Yeah. I mean, I cook, so both of your experiences sound horrible, and I'm really sorry. Like, it's just messed up. Like, after working so long in the industry, when you hear this stuff, I'm just like, what the hell is wrong? Like, what is wrong with us to put up with this and like not do anything about it? It's just like crazy. So I mean, like mine, being a cook is a little, I don't know, like you're really free spirited to go, you could walk into a kitchen and be like, let me stage here. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then they're boom, I'm hired. So it's not like, oh, if I leave one job, what am I going to do with my life? So it's like, oh, just go next door to the restaurant there.
I'll let somebody
like 100 restaurants on one block.
It makes a lot of sense.
So like that's why it took me a while to realize about like what the bait and switch that I experienced, because I've had so many jobs. So, and I mean that's just I just been all over. But I work in Chicago, and I was looking on Craigslist. I don't know when did I was living in Alaska. I came back from Alaska, and I just, so I wasn't in Alaska for 5 years. So I was still trying to like figure out what was new in Chicago at that time. So I really didn't know what was the bad and the good. So I had to learn a little bit, and so Curls, I'll drop names. I have no problem with that. Curls is on Michigan Avenue, and it's a sports bar. Let's get real, but like they also.
What's the name of the place? Pearls.
Curl, KROLLS. So it's on Michigan, like on 15th or 16th in Michigan. So yeah, and so when there's events at Soldier Fields, they get really busy. So I knew it was like busy place, so why not apply for it? The job was a kitchen nighttime supervisor job, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I'll just run the nighttime and call it a day. And I get there, and I meet with the owner. It's a Wisconsin-owned restaurant, so they brought their recipes over into Chicago. It's like butter burgers and roaster chicken, good stuff. I liked it.
Yeah.
But go in the kitchen, and I should have red flags are going off like crazy, it was just a mess. And but I was like, whatever. I just check it out, give it the benefit of the doubt. And so you'll be the nighttime supervisor. And I was like, okay, cool. So she leaves me, and then I'm standing in the kitchen okay, what do I do? And then 2 hours later, the guy that runs the kitchen comes in. And I was like, okay, so what do I do? He's like, so what did you get hired for? He didn't even know what I was there for or anything. And then it was just a hot mess. And then and eventually they just needed someone to run the tickets on busy nights during the nighttime. But the guys that were all working were, no offense to anybody ever, but they were all definitely convicts. They definitely were served in jail at all. Or maybe they lived in halfway houses. I don't know, but they were definitely very sketchy, dangerous people that I had to tell to make chicken sandwiches and flatbreads to, and so it did not go well. And I was not about to even with the full line, I was just you guys know what to do. There was no running the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then eventually
it's once again these situations where Ellen mentioned this at the onset, where I'm given a title, but the title doesn't mean anything.
Right.
You're a dishwasher who then sometimes gets to do cool shit, and it's that doesn't work in this industry. I want to take this in a little bit of an interesting direction, because I think there's some underlying things, and it kind of comes to, Ellen, you mentioned the fluidity, so I want to start with you. There's this idea of pay range and based on experience that I think is garbage and needs to go away. This, let's just go with line cook, let's say, for example, where it's $14 to $18 an hour based on experience. And the reality is what they're trying to do is pay everybody $14 an hour, but bring people in who are at the level and then find an excuse to pay the $14. So I'm fascinated in that, as that in and of itself is a bait and switch as well. Keisha, real life, Keisha's kid needs some attention. So Ellen, jump in and we'll bring Keisha back in the conversation.
Yeah, I think that is a big part of the bait and switch. Again, I go back to what I said before about people who are hungry and who want to move up from dishwasher to prep cook, from line cook to sous chef and whatnot. Those of us in that spot, we're going to be willing to take $14 an hour. Our minimum wage in New Hampshire is under $8 an hour. Over the border in Massachusetts, I believe it's 15. But a line cook job around here, you're going to start at $14 or $15 an hour. They're going to say in the ad nothing besides based on experience. And if you show up for the interview, they assume you're interested. And they usually offer you $14 or $15 an hour, and maybe you negotiate another 25 cents an hour, but you don't know how many hours you're going to be worked. So it's very it's a gamble every time we apply for a job. I mean, just like Keisha was saying, you don't know what you're walking into. Half the time the existing staff doesn't know who you are, that you're coming, what your title is, or any of that. I'm sure most of us have had this happen where you get hired in either a regular line cook role or a supervisory role. You show up your first day and the team asks, who are you? What are you here for? And nobody told them that you were coming. Nobody told them that there was a new supervisor or anything like that. And that goes both ways too. A lot of times we'll walk onto a new job and we're unaware of who's in charge, and it's usually part of my language, but it's usually the person with the biggest balls in the kitchen, whether they have the title or not, calling the shots. And nobody ever tells you, this is the manager, here's the sous chef, over here, this guy's been here for 12 years. So it's just a big unknown. You know, we walk in taking a risk every time we take a new job, I think.
We need to have like a data chart for just like people who experience these horrible jobs. Like we need something to.
You don't have an onboarding. You know, the industry. I mean, there's places that have great onboarding programs and hiring practices, but I think in especially the smaller places, the mom and pop joints, there's really no real onboarding. And whether it's, you know, even staging or staging is like, what is the standard for that? Is that mean you're working for free for a shift, or does that mean that you're coming into the kitchen for 45 minutes to supervise how the kitchen?
There's no guidelines.
Like, what does that mean? What's the standard? And if you're showing up for a position that you've been hired for. I mean, that actually happened to me too once, but it's just like, where is the onboarding? How does the company decide how they're going to welcome employees, you know? And it would be nice if, I know that hiring practices can't be standardized across the industry across the 50 states, but it would be really great if there was some kind of united clarification so people knew what to expect, you know,
or some type of like accountability, you know, like if you're not doing this, then people need to know you're not doing this, because that's the problem. Like you're still blind. We're still blind.
Yeah, I think
there's Yelp, you know, so we need like a Yelp for chefs and restaurant industry workers.
There's Glassdoor, and I feel like Glassdoor is going to end up becoming something within the hospitality industry. Here's the challenge of it is language matters. Like we're in the business of language, right? We are communicators. We choose food, beverage, and hospitality as our medium, yet we're purely communicators. We're communicating something about ourselves, about our team, about our city, about our culture. So I think language is going to matter. We talked about stages a little bit. We're going to talk about it a lot more, because what started as the stagiaire of like an educational base, think of internship and apprenticeship, has turned into the potential to be like, just go chop onions for 8 hours. Like, that has no value. Yes. So language is going to matter, because I think what's going to end up happening is when you say, hey, come in for a stage, there needs to be follow-up to that statement. There needs to be follow-up to the working interview. Are we talking about a shadow? Are we talking about an hour? Are we talking about 3 to 4 hours? Am I actually jumping in? Like, what is the expectation? And then what's a reasonable exchange of either
like a free meal
pay for somebody if they're actually going to be producing labor that leads to sales, or are they going to be shadowing? Are they going to show off some skills? Like there's different expectations, and each of those would have a different expectation of the type of person that's going to come for that job. Right. And so it's back to this. I mean, Ellen, I'm going to use the word fluidity like all the time from now on, because it is hell, the position you thought you were hiring for in the restaurant, 5 days later when you interview, maybe something different, because 2 more people quit because you're an asshole and you do have the biggest balls in the kitchen, and you use them to oppress people, and you wonder why everybody is leaving. And so now you have to hire 3 more positions. So I think,
but that's also like that behavior also needs to be accountable though, because like that's not okay either. Like,
many chefs have gotten this idea that in order to be a strong leader in the kitchen, that you need to be loud and aggressive. And I thought
that's a dying breed. That's a dying breed. And and people are not going to be, I've never worked in a place where it's acceptable for a long period of time.
No, I have, but not in the last 15 years. I definitely saw.
Okay, so it's a dying breed. That is, that.
I still see it though, but not with.
It's there, yeah, for
not
sure.
with the successful guys. The ones that are
not the successful ones
on the game are calm, controlled, and
always, and they're the best. And people work there for longer than 2 years.
Yeah.
Well, there's a nurturing thing there, right? They take people in, teach them, and share the knowledge.
And that's why people love the industry. I mean, there's always the yin and the yang, the good and the ugly. There's a lot of ugly. There's a lot of good.
Greatest strength is also greatest weakness if you don't nurture it properly. So I'm a big believer in that. There's some things that are going to come out of this, and the three of you and everybody tuning in can count on myself, Sophie, Andrew, Corey, our whole team at Best Served, is to continue to highlight the human stories, right? Because it's just, as a chef, I've had to reflect on the fact that I thought getting plates thrown on my head was a badge of honor. It was just fucking stupid and toxic, and it led to burnout, And so I have to grapple with that all the time. I have to take my own medicine and say, like, there's lots of things that I've done in the industry that have led to the industry being what it is. And I have to own that.
Bathroom break. You got to take the bathroom break.
It's so funny. One of the nicknames I mentioned this before, in this live I did yesterday, is one of the nicknames I had was the camel, because I never took a bathroom break because I had to stay on.
Well, I heard that. That's what made me think of it, because hearing that clip that you said about that, it made me think too. Yeah, I've worked. Oh,
you're actually telling me you listened to that? Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, you're so right. It's like, how many of us have gone to work thinking it's okay to not take care of human functions,
and then we're not even have health insurance. You want to put us all in these crazy environments, but not offer health insurance. It's like. Yep.
Yeah, this
is the reason why I'm not in the industry, is because I am a mother and I just can't sell my soul anymore. And I need my kid needs health insurance, and I want to be in his life. I don't want to be gone when he's home from school.
I saw a great that offering or not having health insurance for food and beverage workers is looting. This last year I saw that is basically that asking people to come to work during a health pandemic and not being able to give them health insurance or benefits for that, or to deal with that, it's really, maybe this year is as tragic as it's been, can really shed light on those issues and really force changes, because I've been lucky. I've had jobs for at least 15 years where I've had benefits, but I know that those jobs were really hard to get. And and I know that I'm in the minority there. So I feel for the industry when I know that they don't have insurance, Yeah.
One of the things, Keisha is a prime example of this, where it's like we have to make decisions between living a life and being in this industry. And that's just not a decision we should have to make. Like, we should be able to commit ourselves to a career path that allows us to have a path to retirement. Imagine that. One of the core principles that I built, trying to build all this on, is imagine a world where the norm is 65-year-old line cooks getting ready to retire because we built an equitable, profitable, and sustainable model for this industry where they have that opportunity. I don't know any 65-year-old line cooks, right? So the reality is we all eventually are on our way out anyway. And so, Keisha, you're a prime example of the fact that we're losing the most talented, passionate people in this industry. And that is a huge vulnerability we're not paying attention to.
I did not leave the industry. I'm still in the food industry. I do food science. I make sure no one's getting sick. Okay.
At least say restaurants are. Then maybe
part of our industry.
I'm still part of the food supply. Yeah.
So here's something I want to end with, because I think it's important for us to reflect on this. We have to cultivate future leaders in this industry. We have to cultivate an industry where all four of us and anybody else who touches the food system, to your point, Keisha, has a clear path to a life, like a life that is sustainable for all of us, because we can't just keep churning through 19-year-old kids and building an industry on just bodies and hands and
No, we need
expecting
to fix.
that we have any
Yeah.
sustained opportunity at success. So I want to finish
Yeah,
with
no.
that. Ellen, Keisha, Heather, in that order, I want to come to you. Any last thoughts? Ellen, for you, last thoughts as we wrap up here.
Yes, last thoughts on what was said about being able to be a human being while holding a job. Simple things like bathroom breaks. I'd like a job. You can have the job, and you should know that I treat my staff very well. Great, thank you, chef. Here I am for my first shift. First shift happens, you're on the line for 7 hours, and you can't even use the restroom. You know what I mean? So there's this huge disparity between these jobs that are sort of being sold to us right now, because at least in this region, there are a lot of vacancies in kitchens.
Yeah.
And the disparity between what's being sold to you as a prospective employee and the reality of your first shift and however long you stay there. So, yeah.
I appreciate that as always. Keisha, for you, any last thoughts, any hopes you have? Look, Keisha, maybe more specifically, I now am an elder statesman in the industry, been in the industry for 20 plus years, right? And now I have 2 young sons. My family has been in this industry for 121 years, 5 consecutive generations. And I think about family legacy all the time. And I had to ask myself, would I want my kids to be the 6th generation? I said, fuck no.
No.
And then I said, you know what? Now I have to commit myself to build an industry.
And it doesn't it suck?
Yes.
Doesn't it suck? Like, I can't teach my kid the alphabet, but my kid knows how to peel potatoes and chop garlic. You know, so it's like
Very important.
so it's like, this is where I'm good at doing. That's what I'm good at doing. And I'm good, you know, and I taught so many people. So it's like, it's a damn shame, isn't it? It's a shame that we feel this way. But, you know, like I still am in the food supply, and I see all the money that gets spent on food, and to like what we talked about before, like to have all these people and involvement and just getting that dish to your table, to have a dishwasher start to make it. It's just like, it blows my mind. Like, if you ever think about the food supply, there's hundreds of people and things in place, and you know, for us to even eat anything, to put anything in our mouth, and for the only people that are not being appreciated and not getting paid are the people that are serving it and cooking it. Everyone else is being taken care of. Everybody else gets health insurance and 401ks and paid time off, you know, like, and it's just crazy to me that no one in this industry feels like that's an issue, and no one's standing up to fight against it. And we definitely need solutions to these problems. And if I'm feeling this and you guys are feeling this, I'm sure thousands of other people are feeling it and probably have hundreds of millions of stories to tell. Because I mean, I've been in industry for 13 years. I could literally tell you hundreds of horror stories. I mean, I have a fucking oven fall on me, okay? Like, because it wasn't pushed up into, it was a flatbread oven. It fell right on me, you know? And I didn't have health insurance. And they were worried about workers' comp and stuff like that. And like, I don't care. I was okay, you know, like some Vicodin and some burn cream did the job. But what I'm saying is, like, no one cares for the bottom. Like, how are the chefs and the servers the bottom feeders of the whole food supply? Because that's what we are. We're the bottom. We're at the very bottom. Like, you know, it's just, you know, and it needs to be changed. And who's gonna bring us all together, and
the 4 of us
unify us.
The 4 of us are going to start right here.
And it's not, and maybe our
day.
kids keep it going. You know what I mean? Like, that generation is dying. That in your face, spit in your face, throwing boiling water at you, sizzle plans. I mean, it's still there, you know, but it's dying, and people are not putting up with it. You know, they're just not.
When you say it does start with us, I feel like part of my responsibility to this problem is that because I came up in the industry when it was very misogynistic. I was like the first female on a lot of fine dining floors and stuff that we put up with stuff. And then 10, 15 years later, we know it's wrong. And when I have, you know, a 20-something-year-old kid asking about taking a meal break at 6:30, and I freak out because I'm like, that's unheard of. You can never take a break between 5 and 9 o'clock. You know, that's crazy. Realizing, like, my problem there is that I should have made sure that this kid knew that he had to eat before that time, and made sure that he was taken care of. you know, and
It's like
take
those simple things.
that being that leader to say, okay, it's 4:00. How is everybody eaten? Is everybody taken care of? Have you all had your bathroom breaks? You know, are you ready? What can I do to help you if you're not? Or do you need food? Let me get you something to eat, you know, and kind of like cultivating a different environment than what we came up in. And I think that that's the hardest thing to do, is to say, well,
It's gonna be hard.
why did you have it better than me? You know, instead of saying, you know, I had it kind of messed up and I don't want that to happen to you.
That's it. Mic drop.
And we're humans. We have to
So
care
good,
for each
Heather. I
other.
could not agree more. We have to take on the responsibility of that leadership and cultivate what we can't say kids these days have it this and that and the other. The reality is, like, we're pissed off about the situations we put ourselves into and that we are put through. And now you end up finding ways to project that on other people. It's not the way forward. It has to be about sitting down at a table like this, having a meaningful conversation, figuring out how we build, what are we actually trying to build. And for me, it comes down to a sense of belonging, that we found our people. We didn't want the other jobs. We found our people. And I want us to really focus and get back to that. So that's it. I thank you to all three of you for speaking. Again, everybody.
So sorry I was late because I'm sure I missed.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We're done. We nailed it. Perfect episode. This again, everybody, was Best Served Podcast.
Anytime.
298 bait and
Let's
switch
keep it
job
going.
offers. So much more that we really were able to talk about. So thanks to all three of you for being on.
Thank
It
you.
was nice checking in with all of you. Thanks so much.
All right, everyone. Have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers.